in the city. Remember you used to drive a Yukon. I pick up whenever you call. In the parking lot in Tucson.
Hey guys, it's April. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're heading to our favorite room. You already know, One Eye Jacks in Sarasota, Florida. We've got about 4 hours to play some 1-2 and try to spin it up to get a buy-in for one of my favorite tournaments. It's the Wacky Wednesday no rake tournament. First, we got to spin up the cash and get our buy-in. Wish me luck and let's go crush. So for this first hand, we actually tried to get a little out of hand here on the button. We looked down at 6-9 of hearts and there are 2 limpers, so we do decide to limp as well on the button. The small blind actually bumps it up to $7, and the 2 limpers and myself, third limper, decide to call. So we are going 4 ways to the flop. The flop comes out 6, 5, 8 rainbow. So we do flop middle pair as well as a gut shot, and it does check around. The turn is now the king of spades bringing in a spade draw. The small blind now leads for $7 into 28. The first player folds and the older gentleman in the cutoff calls. Now I decide to raise this up as a bluff. I do have a gut shot still. I do have middle pair. I do think I can eventually get a king 2 fold. So I decide to bump this up to $30. But to my surprise, the small blind calls, and now the older gentleman in the cutoff actually decides to min click us. So now I am feeling a little uneasy. I'm feeling like something's not right here. So I do decide to make the discipline fold here and not take this any further. And good thing, because the small blind actually makes the call. And the river is another king, where the small blind now leads for $75. The older gentleman in the cutoff goes all in, and the small blind actually tanks and eventually calls and actually has ace king for trip kings, where the old man actually has 4-7 of clubs and flopped a straight. So I'm very glad I didn't decide to take this any further and got out of the way before things turned catastrophic. So for the next hand, we look down at ace-5 of spades under the gun. There's a button straddle, 2 callers, both small blind and big blind. I raise to $20 and we have 3 callers, the low jack, the button, and the small blind. So we are going 3 ways to the flop, and there's about $70 in the pot. The flop comes out king 6-4 with 2 spades, so we do flop pretty well here. I decide to c-bet here, and I go about half pot, and we get 2 callers, both the low jack and the button. The turn is now the 10 of clubs. I think I should have gone for a double barrel here just to see what happens, but with both of them calling, it is a little scary. I do decide to check, and it actually checks through. The river is now the queen of diamonds. And I think if I was going to make a move, this was the spot that I missed. I think if I just go big here, I do, get it through, but it is hard out of position against 2 players. So ultimately I decided to check, and it does check through again. And unfortunately we lose this pot. We didn't hit our spade draw, obviously, and both players actually ended up showing a 6. So low jack had 8-6 of spades and the button had a6. So they actually chopped though, and won with a pair of 6s. This next hand, we look down at pocket 10s on the button after 2 limpers, so we do bump it up to $15 here, and we get 3 callers. The big blind calls as well as the 2 original limpers. Now the flop is very, very good. We flop a set of 10, so the board is kind of wet though. It's 10, 7, 3 with 2 hearts, and it does check through here. I do put in a c-bet here, obviously, with the board texture, and we only get called here by the big blind. The other 2 limpers decide to get out of the way. The turn is another 7, which is great because obviously now we have top boat. I'm hoping the big blind has a 7. I do go to small here just in case. I don't want to scare him out of the pot, so we do actually bet pretty small here into the pot. And he does decide to make the call. The river the flush complete. So it could not have been a better card. Now it's even better, he decides to lead here. So he goes 75 bucks. Now I don't really know why he didn't go all in, because he only had about 30 bucks or 40 bucks left behind him, but I do go all in and he folds. So obviously he was just trying to take the pot here. I'm not really sure what he had, but we do scoop this pot. This next hand was probably the worst hand of the entire day. We looked down at pocket aces in the hijack. There is a $5 button straddle. Under the gun, who was a tighter kid, makes it $20. Under the gun, 1 calls, middle position calls, and we do decide to 3-bet here. Now, I don't know really what to do as far as the 3-betting side. I was a little stuck on this. I didn't know. Part of me was thinking I should just go all in, but I'm like, no, that's kind of crazy. Like, no one's going to call me. I decided 100. I think really the best option would have been about 150. But yeah, we make it 100. The button straddle now goes all in for his remaining 50. The original razor folds, under the gun 1 folds, and now the middle position flats the $100 3-bet. So I'm not really sure what he's got here, what his range is. I've never played with him before. The flop comes out literally the most disgusting board that you can imagine while having pocket aces. It literally comes out 8, 9, 10 with 2 diamonds. So literally the most disgusting wet and dynamic board. He decides to check it over to me, and I don't know why I didn't just put in at least a small bet to see, you know, does he check raise me? Does he call? You know, just kind of evaluate on the turn. I decided to check back. The turn brings in a 5, a complete blank, and at this point he does basically decide to put me all in. He puts out about 200 and I've only got about 250 left. So I know there's no getting out of this at this point. I kind of tank and just kind of consider what he may have. I definitely think, you know, jacks could do this, queens could do this, a set of 10s obviously, but also just thinking I have ace king. So ultimately I do make the call, and unfortunately he turns over queen jack suited. So he actually has the stone cold nuts and called the 3-bet pre-flop with the queen jack suited. And not only did he flop the nuts on me, but the button also flopped the nuts, but with a smaller straight. He's flopped a straight with 6, 7. So they literally both flopped straights on me while I had pocket aces. And this was a huge pot, the biggest pot we lost of the day. Thankfully, not long after we do get it back, we look down at red pocket queens in the cutoff. Under the gun makes it 10 and low jack calls. We decide to bump it up to $45, where now the big blind calls, the original under the gun razor calls, and low jack calls. So we are going 4 ways to the pot, and we have about $180 in the pot. Flop comes out 9, 7, 7 with 2 diamonds. Big blind checks, under the gun checks, and now the low jack decides to bet $15. I don't know what type of bet this is, but I decide to raise it now to 50, just to kind of see where I'm at, get some other people out of the pot if we're not good, and kind of see what he does from there. Now the big blind folds. The original under the gun razor calls, and now the older gentleman in the low jack who threw out the $15 folds. The turn now brings out the 8 of clubs, and the original razor checks again. And at this point, I am not thinking he has me beat. I don't know what he has. I'm thinking a pocket 10s, pocket jacks maybe. So I do decide to go all in now. He only had about 70 bucks left behind. And he does make the call, and I'm a little, you know, scared for a second. I'm like, oh crap, what are we running into? Hopefully it's just jacks or 10s. And to my surprise, he flips over king 10 offsuit. So I'm not really sure what he was going for here. He called the face on the flop with king 10 off, and then the turn brought him a gut shot straight, and he called. I don't know if it was his first time playing. I have no idea, but thankfully we hold and we are good. Yeah. This next hand, we look down at the ace of clubs and the jack of diamonds in the hijack. Under the gun raised to $5. Under the gun 1 calls, middle position calls. So we decide to raise it up here to $45, trying to get it isolated just so we can go heads up. But that does not happen because now the big blind calls the 45. The original raiser decides to fold, thankfully, but the under the gun 1 and middle both decide to come along here as well.
Thank you.
So we are going again 4 ways to the flop. The flop comes out both magical but also scary as hell at the same time. We flop the nut straight on an all heart monotone board and we have no hearts in our hand. So the flop comes out king, queen, 10, but all hearts. It does check to me, and we do go ahead and bet half pot here with absolutely no clue of what we're going to do if somebody check raises us, check jams on us, because you know what? We're just gonna live in the moment and pray to God that doesn't happen. And thankfully, that's just what happens. Everyone folds. We can wipe the sweat off our brow now and move on to the next hand and scoop this beautiful pot in. And this next hand, we look down at pocket sixes and the low jack. Under the gun 1 makes it $10. I do decide just to call here, and the small blind and the big blind both decide to come along as well. So we are going 4 ways to the flop, and we have $40 going into the pot. The flop comes out nothing at all that I want to see. It comes out ace, queen, 9, all hearts. Obviously, we've got no hearts. And the under the gun 1 original raiser does c-bet here, and I honestly don't like this board. I don't know what the other 2 are going to do, so I go ahead and get out of the way and fold. This next hand was by far the most fun hand of the night. We look down at 7-5 of spades in the big blind. We have a limper under the gun, and then cutoff bumps it up to $10. Button calls, small blind calls. You already know I'm calling.
No!
Under the gun calls as well. So we are now going 5 ways to a flop, with the pot being $50 in the middle to start with.
Yeah, that's the one I have, yep.
The flop comes out 4, 3, 6 with 2 spades. You hear that right? We flop a freaking straight with a flush draw and a straight flush draw. I mean, it could not be any better for us right now. Okay, I lied. It does get better because I check. The under the gun original limper leads out for $10. Then the original raiser men clicks to 20. The button calls the 20, and then the small blind calls the 20. Like, what is actually going on right now? I decide to raise it up here really big. I raise it up to 100 to let people know I'm not messing around. I've got a good hand, and if you got something good, then call me. The under the gun actually puts in the call. The original raiser goes all in for the rest of his chips. Button folds, and then this small blind makes a cold call too. I have no clue what's going on, but I kind of like it, but I also am a little scared at the same time. The turn now brings in a queen, so nothing about the board changes at all. But however, the small blind now decides to just lead out and ship it. I'm actually thinking we're chopping here. He's on a major flush draw. Obviously, I snap call, and under the gun does get out of the way now. And we are off to the river. The older gentleman who went all in the small blind turns over queen 3 of diamonds. So he had just the bottom pair on the flop, and he turned 2 pair. I don't know if he thought I was, you know, trying to pull one over on everyone. I have no clue, but he shifted with the 2 pair. And thankfully, we hold. The board does not pair, and we scoop this gigantic pot. And literally the very next hand, we look down at pocket 10s. We are now in the small blind. I make it $15 after 2 limpers. The small blind and the cutoff both call. The flop comes out 6, 6, 7, and honestly, I don't know why I did this, but I try to get tricky and check, which honestly just led to bad decisions later on because I check, small blind checks, and now cutoff decides to stab, and we are only 3 ways here. Both myself and the big blind do call. The turn is a king. I decide to check. Big blind checks, and cutoff now double barrels. His sizing wasn't too big, but the double barrel was interesting. I do decide to call. Big blind gets out of the way, and now the river brings in the third six. So any boat there, king's boat, 7 is a boat, 6 you have quad 6s. I've obviously got a boat with pocket 10s, and I do decide to check one more time, hoping that he's going to give up on the river. But unfortunately, he hits me with the old triple barrel and bets $125 into a pot of about $200. I kind of tank here. I mean, it really didn't feel like a bluff, but at the same time, when I'm thinking it through, it's like, okay, what did you stab with on the flop? What did you just stab? You know, king jack, king queen. Did you limp ace king? Highly doubtful. And then you just nailed a king on the turn. So I'm thinking this through. Then he just starts talking and giving me these facial expressions, and I'm just like, okay, I don't know. Is he scared? Does he not want me to call, or is he just trying to play reverse psychology on me so that I will call? So all of this was going through my head, and unfortunately I made a fold here, and I do think it was a bad fold. I really do. It's just like, what are the chances that he nailed the king on the turn? More than likely he had like a 7, like an ace 7, 7, 8, and was just hoping that his 7 was good here. He definitely didn't have quads, or he would have had a high hand, so I know that he didn't have quad 6s. But yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think? Do you guys think I should have called? I did fold, obviously. Now I regret it. I wish I would have called. But do you guys think I should have called, or do you think it was the right fold in the moment?
I just don't see, how did you hit the... It's like I'm going against quads or nothing, because you bet the flop. Then what, you just nailed the king on the turn? I don't get that. You just nailed it? What if you flopped 7, but I beat 7s? I do. God, it feels like a bluff. I don't know why. It feels like a bluff. I'm gonna fold, but I really think you're bluffing right now.
And for the last hand of the session before we pack up and leave, we look down at ace 3 of hearts in the big blind. Under the gun bumps it up to $10. The button calls, and we come along as well. The flop comes out king 6 7 rainbow, and it does check through. I now plan on starting a bluff on the turn now that it's checked through. The turn is a 4, so I go ahead and lead for pot here, and under the gun calls, and button gets out of the way and folds. The river is a blank. It's, I believe it was a jack if I'm not mistaken. And I decide to go for half pot here. I didn't want to go anything too crazy just in case he did have something hit set or whatever the case is. So I go about half pot, and he does fold 5 6 suited and shows me. So he actually had a pair of 6s and turned open-ended, and I showed him the bluff, and he gave me a fist pump there. So that was a fun one before we packed up and left. So even after the run-in that we had with the aces in the beginning of the session and a couple of badly played hands by me, we still did walk out with a profit of $400. So it was actually a very fun night. And then we played the Wacky Rake tournament right after. Unfortunately, we busted. We did not make the money on that, but hey, at least we got the buy-in for it. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time.